This meeting is being recorded. Um, Welcome everyone. I'm so happy to have you guys here for today's online Python session. But before we begin, I'd like to briefly share that this class is brought to you by Strategic Minds Foundation. Strategic Minds Foundation offers free online learning sessions for kids, engaging, fun, and designed to help children strengthen their academic skills outside the classroom. At the heart of Strategic Minds Foundation is a deeper mission to make education more accessible for all. In addition to providing free online classes, the foundation is dedicated to helping underprivileged children get basic school supplies. So a little about me. My name is Arnav Doshi, and I'm really passionate about technology and teaching. I got first place in the FBIC district coding competition and second place in the district robotics competition. I'm also the lead programmer for my robotics team. Some rules for the class. Please raise your hand if you want to speak, and I'll give you a chance to talk. Use your real name when joining the class. Be respectful to everyone. Kind words and listening ears make a great learning space. Keep the chat related to the topic so we can all stay on track and get the most out of our time together. So now let's jump into the lesson. So before we start, I just think before we jump into Python, I think we should talk about some programming just so that we can understand what Python is all about. So what do you guys think coding is? Okay. So yeah, programming stuff to do something. Yeah, that is what coding is. Yeah. Another way to describe coding is giving instructions to a computer or robot so it knows what to do. But computers are not super smart. So we have to be I mean, computers are not super smart. So we have to be super specific when we give instructions to a computer, right? So let's take an example. On telling a robot on how to eat pizza. So what do you guys what do you guys think would be like a way to tell a robot to eat pizza while being super specific? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good. So you have to take the slices and then you have to put it in your hand. So if I were to describe it to a robot, what I would tell the robot to do is I would tell the robot to move its hands near the pizza, then grasp the pizza, then raise the pizza near its mouth, then open your mouth, then put the pizza inside your mouth, then take a bite, chew, swallow, and repeat until either your stomach is full or you finish the pizza. Now, you see how I was being very, very specific. I think that goes back to what I was saying about computers are not smart, but they're fast. So when we're giving instructions to computers, we have to be extremely specific so we get what we want to be done from the computer. Now, what is a program? And if you want, you can just raise your hand and then you can unmute. Yeah. All right. So yeah, yeah. That's basically it. Yeah. A program is a sequence of instructions for a computer. Yeah. And then programs can be written in like various programming languages. So computers, they don't really like talk in English. So we can write programs in various programming languages, which are like specific languages that computers understand, right? So what is a programming language? So yeah, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. A language where you code your task in. Yeah. So a programming language is a way for humans to give instructions to computers. So now let's learn a bit about Python. What is Python? Python is a type is an example of a programming language that you can give use to give computers instructions. And now why do you think Python is good? Yeah, Python is simple, clear, easy to read, as you said. And also Python is popular and it's heavily used in today's world. Another big thing with Python is that it's the basis for machine learning and AI. Now, for creating code and executing our programs, we'll be using text editors. So, where can we code Python? We can code Python in two places. We can code it online on websites, or we can install it on your computer. Two places where we can code online are onlinepython.com and Google Colab. And for installing it on your computer, you can visit the link python.org/downloads, and they will give you lots of options to install Python on your laptop, and you'll be able to code Python from your laptop offline. You won't need internet. For these online options, you'll need internet, but it's a lot easier to set up and faster to get started. So for the class, I'll be introducing to you guys onlinepython.com and Google Colab, and if you guys are interested in installing it on your computer and um, downloading it, you guys can just go to python.org/downloads, and and you guys can search on YouTube. There's lots of videos available that can help you with doing that. Um, and also there are a lot of other websites for where you can code Python. These are just two that I saw and I like them. So yeah. So for our first program, it's like a common like ritual, I guess you could say, where whenever you're learning a new programming language, you make a new program. You make your first program and you call it Hello World, and all this program does is it prints out Hello World to the screen. So what I'm gonna do is, and then to print Hello World to the screen, the code we'll be using is just a print, which is like a command that tells the computer to print to the screen, and then we have an open parentheses and open quotes, hello world, which is what we want to print to the screen, and then a close quote and a close parentheses. So let's get into it. Um, so I'm going to first be showing you guys how to do this on onlinepython.com, and then um, we'll move to Google Colab. So this over here, okay. So can you guys see my screen for my browser? Yeah, okay, that's great. So I'm just gonna go to online-python.com and then have nothing here. So if I have something here, I would just delete it. And then I'm just gonna do print. I'm gonna put that open parentheses. Notice how the online python.com, it like knows that I probably will need a close parentheses, so it adds in that close parentheses for me. And same thing for the quotes. And I'm just gonna type hello world. And when I'm done with my program, I have everything. Well, we've coded our first Python program. Um, So yeah, but how do we see the output on the screen? So to actually see to see our output of the program, we have to do is we have to go near the bottom and we have to click this run button, and then we can see here it prints hello world to the screen. Um, and then now for Google Colab, so if you're doing it in Google Colab, all you have to do is you just have to Google Colab, and then you can just click on the first link, and then it'll give you an option. It'll show you everything, and then you can just click a new notebook, and it will give you a space to code. I have a notebook here, right? And this is what you'll see when you open your new notebook. You'll see this kind of screen, and what we have to do here is inside of this block, we have to type our code, which in this case is print open parentheses, open quotes, hello world, close quotes, close parentheses. And then to run our program in Google Colab, we have to click this play button next to the code, and then we will see that while it's compiling, while it's interpreting the code, it will just, and later after some time, it will print out hello world to the screen right below our code. So yeah, that's our first program. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, um, that's great. So now I think we can move on to the next thing. So, now let's move on to the next one, the next thing. So, let's see how we can draw this shape using Python. So, how are we going to draw this shape? Well, we see that over here we have this slant line, right? And then over here we have a straight line, and then over here we have a horizontal line, right? So those are the three like sub shapes, like parts. Those are the three lines that we're gonna need to draw this triangle, right? We're gonna need a horizontal line, a vertical line, and a slant line, right? So let's look at this top right corner over here, right? We see that it's a slant line right next to a vertical line, right? And then as we move down, there's a gap between the slant line and the vertical line, right? And this gap increases as we go down. And then all the way in this bottom line, right? It's the same thing, except instead of a gap, we have these horizontal lines. So let's try coding this. Let's see how the code works for this in Python. So this is the code for how we're going to draw a triangle, right? And as you can see, we're using print statements because this is how we're going to print the triangle to the screen, right? So over here, you'll see that instead of just having the slant line next to the straight line, we have these spaces, right? And we have these spaces so that we can have room for the bottom of the triangle. Because if we were to not have these spaces, what would happen is that this top part of the triangle would be moved to the left, and it wouldn't really be a triangle. So now, to maintain the shape of the triangle, what we're doing is that we're increasing the gap between the vertical line and the slant line, and then we have these spaces for space at the bottom, right? And then we go all the way down, and it's just the same pattern. Increase the space between the gap, decrease the space between, decrease the number of initial spaces. And then when we go down all the way, we see that instead of spaces, we have these horizontal lines to close our triangle, right? Because if we just had spaces here, it would just be two lines. It wouldn't be a triangle. So we add these horizontal lines to close our triangle. So do you guys understand um, how and why this code works to print our triangle? Okay. So now I'll go to Google Colab, and this is place where I have to code it. So I'm just going to do print, and then we have the parentheses and the quotes. And I'm going to add some spaces. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do our slash. I'm going to do a vertical line. And then I'm just going to do something similar where I just add a space to the gap. I take away initial space. I'm just going to go on with this pattern. I have a question. Can you guys see the code? Like, is it clear on the screen? Okay. Okay, that's good to know. Um, so yeah, we have our triangle here, and then we can see that we've almost reached the end of the triangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to replace these spaces with horizontal lines, and we have our triangle over here. So now that we're done with our code, I'm just going to click the run button, and then as it loads, we can see that it prints a triangle to the screen. So does everyone understand like how this code segment works? Alright, okay, that's great. So now, just how I drew this triangle, um, I'm gonna give you guys 5 minutes to try to draw this rectangle and this other triangle, right? And something that I think you guys should try to focus on is like look at the top of the figure, look at what shapes are involved, and then move down the figure, understand what shapes are involved, what lines are involved, and then go to the bottom of the figure and understand what lines are to help you guys, draw the shape. Yeah. Did you guys have any questions? You can ask me, and then after 5 minutes, I'll explain the solutions. I think like the idea was that you guys can use print statements so that you like understand because there's something special with print statements and this triangle. Um, so I think getting used to print statements and then um, using that would be like was the goal of the exercise. But if you want, yes, you can use Twirl. It's just that the solutions are in print. Like that was the goal of the thing. Yeah. And then if you guys are done, you guys can just like say that you're done. So yeah, I'll like talk about the solutions at in 3 minutes. So yeah. Okay. You're done with both of them or okay. So I'll cover the solution. So for drawing a rectangle, as I said, if we look at the shape, I'm gonna look at the shape first. So if we look at the shape, we have these horizontal lines, and then we have these vertical lines with some gaps, and then we have the same thing all the way until the bottom where we have vertical lines, and then we have these horizontal lines. So if we go to the code, then you can see here that we have these horizontal lines at the top, right? And then we have the vertical lines with the gap, and then just the same thing all the way until the bottom where we have horizontal lines instead of gaps so that we can close the rectangle. Now, this drawing a triangle, drawing the second triangle was a bit more interesting. So, if we look at this triangle here, we have, if we look at the top, right, we have these forward slants and then we have these backward slants, right? So, and then as we move down, the gap between the forward and backward slants, it just spaces out, it increases more, all the way until the bottom, where instead of gaps, we have these horizontal lines so that we can close the figure. Um, and then this is the code. Now, for this is slightly different, right? If you look over here, I have these spaces, right, for making room at the bottom, and then same thing on the other side. But something that's different is that for forward slants, I only have one slant, and for backward slants, I have two slants. Now, the reason that I have two slants for backward slants is because backward slants are a special character in Python inside double quotes. So to actually print out a backward slant to the console, we have to put double backward slants and oh, oops. And if I run the code, then you can see that it prints out a triangle. Do you guys have any questions? Or is all clear? You didn't need the double backward slant. Um, it just worked with like a single one. What are you using to what are you coding? Your Colab? Okay. Um, that's cool. Yeah. Okay. Um, but yeah. So I'll just move on to the next thing, and then so let's say if I want to write a story in Python, right? And a short story is there was once a boy named John. John is a basketball player. John is 10 years old, and David is John's friend who is also 10 years old. So to do this, I just write the print statements with quotes and then with the text that I want to print, and then it would just look like this. And if I run it, okay, so this is something that you will face in Colab, where if you like have lots of different notebooks, then it will say too many sessions. Now to avoid this, what you can do is you can click on manage sessions and you can just terminate everything else. And then you can just close it, and now it will run properly. Alright, and I have my story in quotes, and it just prints the story to the screen, right? So what happens if I say that I don't really like the name John, and I want to change the main character's name to Bob, right? I want it to be, there was once a boy named Bob. Bob is a basketball player. Bob is 10 years old, and David is Bob's friend, who's also 10 years old, right? But in this case, I have to go in, and every place I have to change John to Bob. And if it was a longer story, that'd be a lot of work. So what we can do to make this easier for us is we can use variables, right? So what is a variable? A variable is like a placeholder, right? It's a placeholder that has a value, and whenever we refer to like the name of the placeholder, then we can get the value. So these placeholders in Python are called variables. So in this example, I'm just going to make a variable for the main character, which is John, right? So what I do, so how do I initialize a variable, right? So I have the name of the variable, which in this case is main character. I have this equal sign, and then I have John in double quotes, right? So John in double quotes is the value that I want to give the main character. So when I want to print my story, my new story, right? You can see here that it starts off the same with the double quotes, and there's once a boy named, and then we end the double quotes, and we end the double quotes early, because if I was just to say there was once a boy named main character period all in double quotes, then what would happen is it would print main character to the screen. It wouldn't print John to the screen. And since this variable is a special reference to the value of John, right, I have to put the name of the variable outside the double quotes. So now, to do this, since I want to combine the main character and there was once a boy named, what I do is I end the double quotes early, right? So this is our fixed value, and this is our variable value, main character. Now to add them together, to combine them, I use this plus sign, and what this will do is it will just combine it, so it'll be like there was once a boy named John, right? And then similarly, I have a plus sign and the period, so I have a fixed value, I have the variable value. I want to combine them, so I have John and then the period. So that when it prints to the console, it will print there was once a boy named John, period. Now over here, it's the similar thing. I have John, and then I have is a basketball player. So I have the fixed variable, I have the fixed value right here, and I have the variable value right here. Now to combine them, I use the name of the variable to refer to the variable, and I have a plus sign to combine them. And then when it prints, it will print John is a basketball player. Now, if I wanted to change the main character's name to Bob, I could just go over here and I could change John to Bob, and I only have to change it in one place. So that's a benefit to variables. To see how this code will run, we can see over here, and if I run it, so over here I use a name instead of main character, but you can see my variable name can be basically anything. Like if I want, I could just say name. And then as we can see here, we have our story. There was once a boy named John. John is a basketball player. John is 10 years old. David is John's friend. And notice here that since I didn't put a space in between this is and this name, it doesn't print it with a space. So if I want to print it with a space, I have to put a space after the is, so that when I run it, it will be is with the space. So yeah. Is everything clear? Yeah? And like if I wanted to change it to Bob, then I can do it like this, and then it will change every place where it says Bob to every place where it says John to Bob. So yeah. Um, so now I can just, okay, so sometimes you'll need to save, right? And what you can do is you can just click on File, and you can click on Save. And that's how you can save your stuff, or make sure it's saved in Google Color. Most of the time it will automatically save your stuff. So what do you guys think are some types of variables? Okay, so that's a bit advanced, right? Conditionals, those are like if statements, but when we use if statements, what do we use inside of the if statement to make sure, where we get our true or false from? So yeah, we use booleans. So that is actually a type of variable. And some other types of variables are numbers, obviously, like integers, which are basically like counting numbers like 0, 1, 2, 3, 55. And also we have negative numbers like -1, -15, and so on and so forth. And then floats are like decimal numbers, so like 5.7, 3.4. And we can also have negative numbers like -0.3, right? And keep in mind that like you can just have 2.0 as your float, and that's okay, even though it is just 2. So yeah, and then another type of variable, which you said, is a boolean, which is kind of like yes or no, 1 or 0, and true or false. And basically, it's like if a statement is true, then like the boolean variable corresponding to that statement should have like a value of true. And if it's like, so if like the statement is like correct, like yes, like affirmative, then the boolean value would be true. And if it's like no, wrong, negative, it would be like false. And another type of variable, which is the one we've been using a lot, is a string, which is basically a value with characters and double quotes. And basically, this just lets us, print English to the console. So, yeah. Any questions? Okay. So then, I'll move on. Now, oh, and then some code just to describe the types of variables that we have here is so we can have some strings like hello, hello, how are we doing? And we could just have like a little short story over here about our little robot. And strings can be as long as they want to be. For ints, you can have for numbers we have this int over here, and then over here we have doubles, right? And then booleans. So to initialize a boolean, you have to either set it to true with the capital T, and false with the capital F. Now, Boolean values are case sensitive, and variables names are as well. So, what do I mean by case sensitive? I mean that true with the capital T is different than true with the lowercase t. Notice if it doesn't make it blue, and if I try to run it, it will give me an error. Um, it will give me an error. So, and also, like if I try to print my variable, right? If I try to print, you know, boolean 2, notice how this b is capital and that b is lowercase. If I try to print it, and it says there's a name error. And if I do lowercase b, then it will work just fine and it will print out false. So yeah, is everything clear with variables and case sensitive and things like that? Okay. I'm just gonna save this, and then so now let's talk about accepting inputs. So like, what is accepting inputs? So and why would we need to accept inputs? So accepting inputs is basically where your program can read a value that Python gives it, and then it can do whatever it wants with that value. Now, why would you need to accept inputs in the first case? So let's say if you want to say hello to the user, right? But to say hello to the user, you want to make it like special and personalized, and you wanted to say hello to the user after the user tells you their name. So instead of being like hello user, you could be like hello Arnav or something like that. So to accept inputs in Python, we have to use this input function. And basically what this input function does is that it will let the user enter something in, and then it will take whatever the user enters, and it will give that to this variable. Like the value of this input function will be whatever the user outputs in. And over here you can see I'm using a variable username, right? And what I do is I set it equal to the input. So I have the input, and then I can just type my name, and then it will say hello to me. So let's see this with code. So here we have this code. I say I have name is equal to input, and notice similar to the print statements, I have these double parentheses, and then over here I have print, and then I have hello plus the name, which I talked about joining strings in the previously with the plus sign. And name is a variable after all, so we have to use this. We have to do it like this, and then we have these exclamation marks. So let's see how this works. So now as you can see here, it has a box. Google Colab's really nice with this, and it has like a box for my input, and I can just say my name is Arnav, and then it will say hello Arnav. So does that make sense? Does everyone understand like how the basic input function works? Yeah? Okay. So something else we could do with inputs is that we can one second. Something else we can do with inputs is we can prompt the user, right? Because in this case, like I don't tell the user what I want to tell them, what with that I want them to enter my name. So let's say if this case I want to say enter a value, right? And then you would do hello to the value. So what you can do to like prompt the user that you want to tell them to enter a name or enter a number, you can inside of your input function, you can put inside double quotes whatever your prompt is. In this case, the prompt is enter a value. So what does this look like in code? So it says over here we can see in the code it says give me your name, right? And then it has the same print statement and variable thing as before, variable name as before. So if I run it, then let's see, it tells me to give me my name, right? And before there was no text here. It just had like an empty box, so I could just put in whatever I wanted to. But now it says give me your name. So now I know that I can give it my name, and it will do the exact same thing. It will print hello Arnav. So yeah, does everything make sense? Okay, that's great. Um, Now we're going to talk about converting inputs, right? So something about Python's input function is like if I do num input, for example, right? What happens is that it gives a string value to the variable. So even if I enter like 55, it will Python will think that num is a string instead of a number because After all, 5 is still a sequence of characters. Now, to convert it to a number, like to convert it to an int, what we have to do is we have to use this int command, and what it'll allow us to do is we put our variable inside the int command, and what that does is it will take that sequence of characters 5, and it will convert it into a number, in this case 55, and it will store that number inside numeric value. And then similarly, if we wanted to enter a decimal number into the program, like 3.14, then what we have to do is we have to use this float command with our input, and it will convert it into a decimal number, like 3.14, because after all, 3.14 is still a sequence of characters. So let's see how this works in code. So here it says to give an integer, and then when I run the code, and it prompts me for an integer value, so I can say 56, and then it will print the integer value entered is 56, and the integer value entered is 56. Now, I want you guys to notice something here, where over here we have string integer, which is str integer, and it has 56 inside double quotes, right? So what that variable stores is this. That's what that variable stores. What this variable stores, this one actually stores 56. Now the difference is that when we try to print it, this variable, it's already in quotes. So we can just add it to the string and we can say combine both of them. But Python can't really combine integers and strings if we don't use special commands. So what we have to do for that is we have to use this str command, all in lowercase. And what it does is it will take this 56 and it will convert it into that 56 with the double quotes around it. And then with the double quotes, we'll be able to add it together and we'll be able to print it. Now, let's look at something similar for decimal values. Now, in Python, once again, we call decimal values floats. And similarly here, it says give me a float value. We have this one as a string. So if I was to give it 3.14, then that's what Python would be storing it as. And after this one, the value float, we would be storing it as 3.14. Now, when we want to print it, for the first one, it works just fine because the 3.14 is in double quotes. But for the second one, we have to actually convert it to a string and then print it, and then we can add them together. So let's see how this works. So we have these sometimes it comes up in Google Colab. We have too many sessions, and you can just terminate the other sessions and it will work just fine. So we have 3.14 here, and then we can see it prints 3.14 and 3.14. So does this make sense? Okay. So that's it for today's session. Yeah, so next time we'll talk about mathematical operations like plus, minus, multiplication, and division, and we'll talk about stuff like that, more advanced stuff like that. So yeah, stay tuned. Thank you for joining the session.